All right, everybody. Welcome to day 9 of the Promulgated Forms course. Now, I'm not even going to pull up the slides because all the slides are today is just some learning objectives, and the learning objectives are you're going to learn how to do this hypothetical. So I'm just going to pull up the hypotheticals, and we'll go through the contracts. Like I said, if you have either a printed out version of the contract in front of you, or you can kind of pull it up on your web page, kind of next to the Zoom meeting or something like that. It'd be good to look at it. If you filled it out, great. We can go through it and kind of figure out what you did and didn't get right or whatever. And I'll go through and fill them out as well through zip forms. That way we can, I can show you kind of how the process works through there, and then also make sure everything's correct. So, so the first transaction, if y'all read it before, it's going to be Troy Donaldson and his wife Donna have found a home they want to buy, and that home is from the Flemings. They're the ones selling. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the contract kind of side by side with this, and then we'll kind of go through them individually and fill them out. Hypothetical 1. That's going to be fun. There you go. I feel like there should be a book there. Right. Somewhat better. Sure, I guess this line is just going to be. Do that. All right, so it auto-filled the names in because I had them saved as parties in zip form, so it automatically filled them in. But basically, reading through this, Troy and his wife Donna I found a home they want to make an offer on. This is their current address. As a rental, they're anxious to become homeowners because they believe their income can only increase. They have decided to finance the property on an adjustable rate mortgage. They can get an adjustable rate mortgage fixed for 1 year, 5% conventional. Lender is told an interest rate on a loan cannot adjust more than 2% a year or 5% over the life of the loan. There's a 1% origination fee. So, Larry and Marcia Fleming have owned the home that Donaldsons would like to purchase since it was built in 1975. And if you remember that date, that is very key because that means we're going to have to do something with that. 1975 is, as you know, before 1978. So, you have to do a lead-based paint addendum here as well. Basically, Larry and Marcia Fleming are selling a house to the Donaldsons. So, the sellers in this case are Larry Fleming and Marcia Fleming. And the buyers are going to be Troy Donaldson and Donna Donaldson. It's a fun name to say. So, the property is located at 3430 Old Master Drive. Now, I will say this did not give me it didn't give me a lot block or anything like that, and I have no idea. That's not a real address, so I couldn't look it up and find the lot block for it. But in this situation, if you were to find, let's say somebody was at 3430 and they were going to sell their house, you would look up what county they're in. So, for example, 77056 in Houston, Texas, that's actually in Harris County. So you could look up Harris County's CAD, or County Appraisal District, type in the address of 3430, and it will pull up the legal description of those properties, and you can just type those into lot and block like we said before. So for here, since I don't have it, we're just going to leave those blank for right now because we haven't looked them up yet, or because they don't exist. But we're going to put in, oh, sorry. Oh, wow, I'm on the wrong keys. There we go. Known as 3430 Old Master Drive. So, and then you have to put in 77056. So that is what this would look like filled out if you had the lot and block. And this would be, of course, where the subdivision information goes, or anything in that legal description that is not the lot and the block. All right, there is nothing that we need to fill out for exclusions. Reading through this, there is nothing that the Donaldsons would basically like to keep and take with them that should usually convey. That is what the exclusion paragraph would be for. However, it does say here the Donaldsons decide to offer $325 for the property. They will be putting 10% down, which is $32,500, and then if you subtract $325,000 from $32,500, you end up with $292,500. So that is how you would get those numbers. Just basically looking right here, they decide to offer that much, and then they are putting 10% down in cash, which is what this goes to. They are doing third party. Just say they're just using regular financing. The loan will include PMI. None of that basically matters, but they're going to go ahead and do a adjustable rate mortgage or just a regular third party financing. So you're going to click that box there. Leases, there's nothing in here that talks about leases. There will be nothing in any of these that talk about leases because this paragraph is new, so they didn't really have those in the hypotheticals before. There will be stuff in the hypotheticals. I read through the second one, for instance. It says that the option money will not count towards the closing costs. But even though it doesn't count towards it says it doesn't count to the closing costs, that's because there used to be a box to check on if it would or would not count. But in these contracts, now that they changed them, it always counts, so there's nowhere to select that it won't. So it has to. So basically, just don't worry about that in that situation. All right, and then earnest money. So it says here that they are putting up $3,500 in earnest money. So you can fill that out here. And, oh, sorry, my bad. 35 here. That's where earnest money goes. And $1,500 in option money. That is, if that sounds like a lot for option, that's because it is. That is a ridiculous amount of money for option. And I believe here it says it'll be, they want 15 days to investigate everything about the property and be able to terminate. So that is what that goes there. There is no additional earnest money. Now, I will say, if you will never get something like this, if it's kind of confusing going through this and trying to fill out an offer, that's because, like, it took me like all day to do all three of these because it's super confusing. You won't be in a situation where somebody will write you an essay and you just have to fill out their offer from that. Most of the time you can go through it and be like, what are you offering? And just go down, well, what's the earnest money? Who are you sending it to? Blah, blah, blah. You don't have to look up that they're putting this stuff down and then find out where the stuff is going to. Oh, look, the closer will be Larry Spencer. Like, you don't have to look and find that stuff later. It's easier when you're dealing with a real person because you can just talk through this stuff with them. But here we're going to go with Larry Spence ABC title. So what that is showing is that you're picking ABC Title Company, but you also, they want to work specifically with Larry Spence, not just title company in general. A lot of times this will just say, like here in town, it will just say University Title Company, meaning they just want to use the University Title Company. But you can specifically select somebody. All you have to do is add it in either before or after. You can put ABC Title Company, comma, or dash Larry Spence, whatever. It still works. As long as people kind of can understand where you're coming from or what you're trying to do, that works out. And then the address for it is 1219. Now again, how this is also, you know, it's one zip code away, but it's right next to it. It's basically really, really close to it. Houston has a lot of zip codes. You will have to use something that is in the same county at least. It's preferable that you pick something that is very close. You wouldn't want to pick something here in town and pick something far away as your title company. I know in stuff like Harris County, Harris is a really big county. You could technically have a house like this that's almost near downtown and pick something out in like Waller. That's technically the same county, or not. in Waller, but right outside of Waller in Harris County. That's technically the same county, but you're just being annoying at that point. There's no real reason to do that. You'd want to pick something closer to where the actual selling home is located, the selling property. All right, title policy and the survey. So the title policy would be sent to the same. It's the same title company that you would do the auction money or the earnest money to. So this would still be ABC Title Company. It's always going to be the same. Unless it's like an attorney you're putting escrow into, you're sending your earnest money to an attorney and then you're having somebody else draft up a title policy. I guess you could do that, but for like 99% of transactions, if you're using University Title, you're just going to put earnest money with them and then just use University Title as your title policy. And here we're going to put the seller just to, I believe, either said that they would be willing to do it or, let's see. If nothing else, it's usually the seller has to pay for it unless specified otherwise. It's the seller that's going to pay for it. One thing to remember about title policy, just kind of a thing that you might want to know, is that the title policy, it costs the same throughout the entire state. So a title policy at University Title or a title policy at Aggie Land Title or a title policy at Stewart Title in Hempstead or a title policy in downtown Houston or in Dallas or whatever, it's all going to be the same price. You're not going to worry about it costing more at a certain title company. The title policies they're the exact same throughout the entire state. All right, let's keep going through here. So they want the $1,500 to be credited to the sales price. That is going to happen anyway. The Donaldsons want the 4 fog windows in the kitchen to be repaired, and they want to be sure they will be able to put in a pool after closing, and that they will be able to park the RV in the driveway. So just to go off of that, they want the 4 fog windows to be repaired. That would be something, where is it? Possession. That'd be something you would go into possession, right here. So again, how we said 90% of the time, you just want to put as is because you don't want to upset, you don't want the sellers to just pass it up because there's stuff they have to fix. In this situation, they requested it, you can do it. I would have advised these people in this situation to just wait and ask for that as after the inspection comes through. Just ask for it when the inspection comes through, ask if they also clean the window or fix the windows. That way they'll do it then, but you don't have to worry about them looking past your contract because there are special repairs that are needed. So that would be for that. And then if they want to be able to put a pool in after closing and they want to be able to park their RV, that is something you would put down. I don't remember this in objections. So in objections, remember this is where you put residential and rental use. You can also put, let's see. Now, as you can tell, text gets really, really small here. You can either shorten this out or you can actually just put see paragraph 11 special provisions and then just copy and paste this into special provisions. That's probably what I should have done. Actually, I might just do that since there's nothing else that will go in special provisions. So let's do this. And then I don't know if it says anything about them objecting after a certain time. So let's just put it 10 days for here. That is the normal thing. And then in paragraph 11, where it's at, here we go. You can just copy and put that there. Now the reason you wouldn't want to put a pool in and need to be able to park an RV in the driveway is while that's stuff you might request and you think that might be special provisions, if that doesn't come about, what do you want to happen? So if they were not able to park an RV in the driveway, you would want to be able to withdraw from the transaction. That is technically you changing the legal rights, because you cannot put in here, they need to be able to put an RV in the driveway, or they should have the ability to withdraw from the transaction until whatever date. That's you adding stuff to the contract, and if you do that, that's you practicing law. But since there is a spot for objections, you can just put in that they need to be able to park an RV in the driveway and they want to put a pool in after closing. So you can set that there as well. There's nothing here about a homeowners association, so you would assume it's not. Now again, all this stuff, it does not give you the full explanation of what to choose for every single box. The good thing about this stuff is if you were the listing or you're the buyer's agent, I would just put is not, because it didn't say it was. If you look on the MLS and it doesn't say it is, put it's not and send it over. And the seller, it's their job, the selling agent, to look at this and go, oh, it actually is. I need to cross that out and put a check here. You don't have to know everything when you send the first offer and you are sending an offer. They have to then correct the stuff that they know about that you don't know about. The contract has to be correct for both parties, not just for you. So therefore, they need to correct the changes as well. All right, let's keep going here. So, they're going to ask the seller to pay for the title policy. They're willing to pay for a new survey at their expense. So I passed it already. In survey, you put this box here. The buyer is willing to pay for a new survey at their own expense. So you put here, and let's just say 15. Give them 2 weeks to figure it out. You can put longer. Right now in this market, it's taking forever to get surveys done. I might put 21 or 25 here just because that's how long it takes to get a survey right now. And sometimes you can put 7 because if it's a slower market, then surveyors can get out there the next day or the day after that, and you don't really need that much time. So this just kind of changes with how the market's going at the time. They do not feel the need. They need the survey amendment to the title policy. The buyers do want a residential service contract and are going to ask the sellers to reimburse them for $425. And that is where it comes down to the residential service contract and H, the home warranty. So you just put 425 in there. Now what this is saying is that the buyer always pays the home warranty. So the buyer is always paying the home warranty. It's they're ordering it, they're paying for it, but the seller can reimburse the money. So just because the seller is reimbursing them $425 does not mean the seller is buying the home warranty. The seller is just reimbursing them for $425 of whatever they want to put in for a home warranty. Then here we go. We have the listing agent here. Let's see if there's anything about seller's disclosure. So I don't see anything in here about a seller's disclosure, so I'm assuming they have not received one yet. If you're a buyer's agent and you have not received one, buyers are not received, and you put something like 5 days. It's basically saying that within 5 days, the buyer has to receive from the seller, and if not, they have the right to terminate up until closing date, basically. If seller delivers the notice, the buyer may terminate the contract for any reason within 7 days after. So even if they terminate it on day, or they give it to you on day 5, you have till day 13. Now in this case, they have till day 15 because that's what they put in for their termination options. They have 15 days, so they would still get 15 no matter what. But if they put 5 in there instead of 15, they'd still get to 13 days if this was given to them on day 5. The seller's disclosure of lead-based paint, we are going to have to worry about that because, again, prior to 1978, and this house was built in 1975, as it said. Brokers and sales agent, you can just put not applicable because there's nothing in here that says that you are this person's cousin or whatever. And then for closing date, there's nothing in here about the date of closing. So I would just treat this like we are doing a normal, 30-day closing like we do with most properties, and just put in here that you're going to do it on, let's just say, June 29th. Or sorry, May 29th, my bad. And just leave it at that. So that's about when it should come out. So it's easy just to leave it then. Keep that as the closing date because it is usually 30 days unless it's specified otherwise. Hello.
Hi. Did you get my weird message?
Yeah.
I was messaging you on the watch, so whenever you get weird messages,
That's fine. Okay. Let me make sure there's nothing else we need to do in here. Okay, so settlement and other expenses. There is nothing saying that the seller is going to pay the buyers anything at closing. The buyers are not paying. They're not asking for $10,000 or $5,000 in repairs or whatever. So at this point, you just put 0 in here and leave it like that. Oh, sorry. In order to put 0 in on zip forms, you have to double tap space and then put it 0. Let's see. These are all the notices. Again, we have the prorations, after loss, all that stuff, mediation, attorney's fees. And then here, if you look at these, where is it? Both parties travel, so they want the notices to be sent to their agents. Now, this is where you would get that the care of thing coming in. So let's see where. So right here, the listing agent is Tom Price with Wonderful Properties at 1213 Selmore Street, and you are the selling agent and are with I Sell More Properties at 2033 Winston Ave in Corsicana, Texas. So for the buyer, since I'm representing the buyer, another very confusing thing that is very annoying is that if you are representing the seller, you are the listing agent, and if you are representing the buyer, you are the selling agent. Very annoying, and I hate it. I always get confused with that. If you're representing the buyer, you are the selling agent, and if you're representing the sellers, you're the listing agent. I know it sucks. I hate it. I always get confused about that stuff. But so since it says you are the selling agent, you're actually representing the buyers because the listing agent is Tom Price. I'll just put Troy and Donna. So that is what I put there, Troy and Donna, care of me. And it says that the seller is going to be notified by that as well. So you can put in here. You don't have to fill in this this blank here because this is the seller's, this is the listing agent. So this is their agent's kind of job. This is what they would fill in. If you know it, you can just make it easier. But again, you don't necessarily have to. And then the phone, it'd be your. Oh. There you go. So you put in that, and then you put in Tom Price's information here. I think, yeah, his phone number right here. You put that stuff in. So these blanks here. Now, when it comes down to this, if you remember, we did third-party financing. That's what we clicked in box on section box B, I guess, of paragraph 3 for the financing. So third-party financing addendum, you click that. You would need the disclosure for lead-based paint because again, it was before 1978, and you were going to need that. Actually, technically, is all you need for this property, but again, we like to always put in the non-notes addendum, just so we can put in the, if anything's left of the property after closing, it becomes property of the buyer. Again, that's not required, especially for this thing. They don't even have that as like a, they don't mention that anywhere, so you don't have to put it in as far as this goes, but as for here, we like to put that in every time just to make sure. There's nothing said about attorneys or anything like that. And then you don't really know what you don't really execute a date because at this point, again, you're filling out the contract, so you actually don't. The last party to sign fills in the executed date. So you don't have to. It's not your job to fill it in. You would send this to the sellers, and when the sellers sign it, they would fill in the executed date. Or if they counter it, send it back to you or whatever. Whoever's the last party to actually sign or initial, They're the ones who are required to fill out this executed date. And then here for the brokerage firms, that's where you put in this stuff here. So listing broker firm, I'm not going to do all of this because it's repetitive. You don't know the license number. However, you do know that the seller is only the seller's agent and the buyer is the buyer's agent. Or the buyer's agent is only representing the buyer. Sorry. I believe, I think number 3 we go through, it deals with if you are a listing agent. So let's say I am listing Aiden's property, and since I have my sign out front, Vita calls and is asking about Aiden's property, and she likes to put in a contract. I can put in that offer and give it to Aiden, but at that point, I'm working as an intermediary. I'm not working as either person's agent. I think we talked about that in Stefan's class, where you cannot technically work for both people. You cannot be an agent for both people. You can only be an intermediary between the two. Yes.
I came across a thought earlier.
Yeah.
What if they're both Noble's Realty customers?
Both clients?
So the seller and the buyer are both.
They can be like, so for example, I know Aiden's done transactions with another, where he would be like the selling agent and the buying agent is another agent in the office. That is okay, but basically they're not allowed to talk about each other's clients. Basically, Justin, it's kind of Justin's job to like keep them away. They're allowed to send papers and stuff back and forth and send documents and work like normal customers or normal agents. But Aiden can't go over to, if I'm the other agent, we can't go hang out on a Friday and just talk about how our clients are and whatever. It's kind of Justin's job to make sure that we keep work stuff separate, because my job is to my clients and his job is to his clients. So we can't start talking about each other, or else I learn something about his clients, then I have to go tell my clients, and then suddenly everybody knows everything and it's all kind of falling apart. And then I'm not holding up my end of, I'm giving him information about my clients, which is not in the best interest of my clients and vice versa. So it's allowed, you just have to kind of keep them separate. You can, and like what this is saying, this seller and buyer as an intermediary, you can be both. So Aiden can sell a house and have somebody buy a house under him, and he can technically be the intermediary between the two. The problem with that is you don't have clients, you have customers. And how we talked about when you sign a buyer's rep, for example, you have confidentiality, you have this and that. You kind of lose all that stuff if you become an intermediary. Basically, you can pass papers back and forth, but you can't give your opinions to either party. You can't negotiate on behalf of either party. You're just kind of there. If somebody sends you paper, you can send it to the other one. And that's basically all you can do. If you receive an offer, you can hand it off to these people and see what they say. But if they start saying, "Is this a good deal?" You're like, "I can't tell you because I'm just an intermediate at this point. I'm just a paper pusher." So
you're entitled to the whole.
you'd be entitled to 6%. I believe only brokers can do this. So only a broker can be an intermediary for both parties. You can do it as an agent. I know in the office, for example, if I think that's what happened with Aiden's properties, or not, it wasn't that one, it was a different one, but like if Aiden was listing a property and somebody came to him to purchase it, he would just hand them off to me or somebody else in the office, and then we'd have that be split the whole time we're doing it. And while that does lose him on 3%, it gives me 3%, and then next time I get somebody, you kind of help each other out. I think we all have a good relationship here where I'm not going to be so greedy that on a $200,000 house, I want my other 3% too. I'd rather give that to Aiden because I know next time Aiden has something big, he might think of me or whatever. So we like to help each other out anyway. But like, for example, I was trying to work it kind of with Justin just to see what happened. But like, we had a good family friend who was selling a property, and my dad wanted to buy it. And so then it became, well, can I technically work for both of you because y'all know each other, like best friends. Like there's no good. Y'all can just talk to each other and figure out a price that works well, and then I'll just put it in. I'll just write up the contract basically. That's kind of a different situation where Justin would have been like, well, how about Justin technically represents one, or you can't really work as an intermediary, but you could basically say, well, how about I work for just the buyer or just the seller, and the buyer's on his own. Like I would have. In that situation, my dad was buying a property. I could have said, well, how about I help our friend out, and I'm technically the agent for him, and my duty is to him the whole time, and you're just kind of on your own, and you can send us papers, and I'll negotiate with him. And if we were gonna do it, we probably wouldn't have because they're best friends or whatever. That's why it would have been okay. But I'll help him out. You're just gonna do it as your own person. I'll just write up the forms for you, basically. You can do that, but it's just it has to be a really good situation for that because things can go wrong really quickly. So like that situation probably would have worked because we all knew each other. Like again, they hang out like every weekend, so it's not like they're gonna try to hardball each other for a price. Like they're gonna just be like, "$350 sound good? Okay, sounds good to me," and then high five and call it a day. So that's a different situation where that would have been okay. But it's a tricky thing. You don't want to get stuck in between. You don't want to get caught representing one when you should have been representing the other or whatever. So it's just easy to not ever have this intermediary status and just pass it off to somebody else and let them deal with it. So again, like I know Aiden and this other agent are working together. They're both doing the same deal, but I never see them on the phone just chit chat. He'll call her to be like, "Hey, business this and your clients have that and we need this, whatever," and then just move on. It's like, but you don't just catch them just talking about that transaction together for so.
Yeah.
That's a good question. And then this would be and this would be all of my stuff, and this would be all of Tom's. You put their email address, the office address, the city, state, phone number, all that sort of stuff, in here. So I just got to breeze past that because again, it's fairly repetitive. Tom has a 5% listing with the Flemings, and Tom is offering 4% in the MLS system. So I'm assuming he's offering 4% to the other agent. That's what I was assuming this.
I was wondering when I was reading that. I mean, that's
That's
what
like
I assumed from that.
Yeah, that's what I assumed from this, but I'm confused because
I don't know.
why would you only
do
want? Yeah, again, I don't know why they only want 1%, but sure, let's just say 4. And again, this number does not mean anything because you agreed to this in other offers or other documents. I was telling Justin, I actually went and did a showing, or not did a showing. I had clients that went and did a showing with a selling agent, and then when I sent him an offer, the selling agent sent back that instead of 3%, I get 2% because he did the showing for him, so he gets more money. And while he can put that on here, that does not mean anything because the MLS sheet said 3%. So he put it on here, but I was like, I mean, cool, but unless. And what you'll see a lot is he'll put 2% on here, and then when you go to look at the MLS sheet, he's changed it to say 2%. In that case, you're kind of out of luck. But that's why we like to, when we print off our papers, we'll take an MLS sheet and print it off to go do a showing. That way, if a client has questions, we have everything there. When we keep those papers, that way, if he goes back and changes it, we can be like, well, no, because when I signed, like when we started looking at it, it was this. And you can kind of prove that he's changing it in post after you've already filled out the contract. So that is why we print off that stuff, is just to keep an extra layer of like, I get my 3%. It says so right here. So it just comes out.
And people do that.
Yeah. Justin said he actually had a deal where he went and they did 3%. He sent in an offer. They sent it back saying 1. And he went, "You're insane," and then looked up on the MLS sheet, and the guy had already changed it, and he never printed out a paper. So he was just out of luck. He gets 1% of it. Yeah, because the guy changed it, but he also changed the MLS sheet, so there's no record of him ever having it as 3%. And since the MLS sheet is kind of what we use to like agree on our terms, Justin was kind of out of luck at that point. But that's why we print off that stuff we don't want to get caught in that situation. So. And then these are the receipts that, again, you would not have to fill out. This is something that's the title company would fill all this stuff out. All right, so that is hypothetical 1. If anybody has any questions, let me know, because again, I understand it's very confusing. We're going to go through the third-party financing addendum real quick, just to kind of show you what you do in this situation with these numbers up here. There was stuff I was looking like on hypothetical 3 that there were percentages and stuff in that hypothetical that I just didn't make sense of. And Justin made a good point that, like, if I don't know the third-party financing you might know because you talked to your client and they were kind of giving you the information. With stuff like a loan assumption, you're assuming the mortgage of the previous owner, that loan assumption form has like how much you're going to pay per month. You wouldn't know that until you kind of go through the process of them being able to pass it over to you. So that's a form that while you have initially, you kind of can't fill out until you get more information on that stuff. So when you first send over the initial offer, you're not going to send that over because there's nothing. You're just going to say you're going to do it, and that'll be attached later on in the contract, but you won't have any information at the time. So here, so yeah, you put the address and the city name up here. This is the third-party financing addendum here, and then you're gonna have conventional financing. Again, we said the amount for in 3B was $292,500, and then 30-year more. That's normal. So it's going to say 30 years with interest not to exceed 2%. That is what. Yeah. So it cannot adjust more than 2% a year. So that is what this 2% per annum for the first 30 years, because it's again the whole time, not just for the first 5 years or so. You'll see that a lot where it says it cannot adjust more than 1% for the first 5 years, and then after that, it's kind of up to that. And it cannot exceed 5% over the entire loan. So it cannot change. If in 3 years it jumps 2% and it becomes, let's say it's at a 5% on their loan, it jumps to 7. That's okay as long as it never then gets above 10. Basically, is what it's saying. So it can jump. It cannot jump more than 2 in a year, and it cannot jump more than 5 over the entire time of the loan. That is all you have to put back here. Now, again, for this number here, just another thing to point out, the cap on an interest rate loan, so like on a loan in general, the cap for the interest rate, so cannot exceed 5% over the life of the loan. There is no set number that cap cannot exceed. So it is not 12, it's not 6, it's not 15, whatever. It's just whatever the buyer is willing to pay in the market. So that is available in the market. So if the buyer wants to put 4 here and the lender says, okay, that's the cap. If the cap is now, it's not 10, it's 9. If they want to put 12 here, because that's technically available, that can happen or whatever, they can put that in here. So it's whatever the buyer is willing to pay that's available in the market at the time. All right, and then you don't have to worry about any of these other loans because that is not you. Approval of financing, it says that this contract is subject to buyer approval. I put within 21 days. Again, that's kind of what we normally put. So as long as they've, within 21 days, have been approved, or I guess it's not the approval, it's the, if they lose approval within 21 days, that's the problem. So this is why we put 21 here, is to keep that there. Let's see, I believe, yeah. And that is going to be it for this. So that is the whole transaction. Again, if y'all have any questions, please let me know. I know these are kind of confusing, and again, these are tough and tricky just because of the way they're worded. They're not very easy to kind of understand what they're talking about in certain bullets and paragraphs. But you won't. It's not like on your real estate exam they're going to give you this document and you're going to have to write a contract up about it. So don't worry about it that much. You might see something like, if they want to do this, what paragraph would that be in? You might see stuff like that, but you're not going to see, here's this, fill out a contract, because this stuff's really confusing and they don't give you all the information. I don't know if this is a property owners association or an HOA, stuff like that, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, and then the last thing it asked for was a lead-based paint addendum. I actually didn't add that in for some reason. Okay. Oh, that is what it is. My bad. I saw seller's disclosure. I thought it was something different. So yeah, this you're basically putting here that the seller has no actual knowledge of the lead-based paint, because it's just that it's before 1978 that you have to have this, but it's not necessarily saying that we tested it and there was lead. That'd be something like an A. You've known that there's lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards are present in the property. The seller might not know that, so you can put B here if they don't know. And then if the seller has provided purchaser with available records or reports pertaining to lead-based paint, you would put A here. We have not gotten any reports, so that. And then here, the buyer's rights within 10 days of the effective date, the buyer may have the property inspected by an inspector. Lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards are present. The buyer may terminate the contract by giving seller written notice within 14 days of the effective date. So This is just saying that after the effective date, not after your inspection, but after the effective date, you have 14 days to terminate if you find that there are lead-based paint hazards in here. And this, if they've received all copies of the documents, so if they have either one or two, or they've received a pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home, which is it's a pamphlet that you can find in here. I wonder if I can actually find it through this. It might be here. Yeah. So this is what it looks like, and it's just a family, a little pamphlet that just talks about that there could be if it's before 1978 and stuff like that, but it's nothing. The steps to take to make sure keep people safe and make sure it's not or whatever. But that is something. If you have a lead-based paint addendum, it's good to have this, and when you send over the lead-based paint addendum to have them sign, just send this over as well so they receive it. Because I think that's something you just have to give them just to make sure they understand the hazards of it and everything like that. All right, that is everything for transaction 1. We're going to go to transaction 2. Good old hypothetical 2. I don't know. This is it's weird. Okay. I'm used to seeing on half the screen and it's formatted all the screen. All right, so this is the wonderful family contract for the second property that we're doing, the second hypothetical. So for this, Tim and his wife Sarah will purchase a second home, so they're going to be the buyers right here. They give you the lot and block number, which is nice. And the owner is Samuel A. Johnson. So that is why this goes right there. There is just one of them, so you don't need a second seller landlord or sub-landlord. There's just the one seller. And then right here, you have this stuff here given to you. So it's going to be lot 6, block 8. I'm assuming Terrace Edition, or Terrace, I don't know. Let's say Terrace Edition of Waco. So let's just put Terrace Edition there. Why not? Actually, it's probably, I bet the subdivision is called Terrace. It's an edition of Waco. So let's just put Terrace. And it is the city of Waco. And what is the county? All right. And then I believe somewhere down here it gives you. This is why I don't like these things, is they throw everything around. So here we go. This is it. Finally, in like paragraph 4, gives you the address of the property. So 15630 Paradise Ave. And then again. Okay, let's just say there we go. Oh, it does that. I did that. It actually separates it for you, so you don't have to do the same thing. There. All right. So there we have that. Accessories, exclusions. I don't believe there's anything in here that talks about that. And then we get to price. So they're willing to pay $73,000 for it. If the owner, Samuel A. Johnson, a bachelor, will owner finance $25,000. So, yeah. So $25,000 here. They're willing to pay $73,000 or $73,500 for it. I don't know here if that means they're willing to pay that in down payments or if they're willing to pay that in total. That's kind of annoying. Let's just say that's what they're doing. Yeah, let's just say that's what they're doing in down payments. That way it maps it out for us at $98,500 for sure. And then you will put seller financing because that's what they're doing. The $25,000 with this seller financing. Now, if you remember, seller financing is just basically instead of getting a loan from a bank, you're getting a loan from the seller, and you have to pay them back with interest as opposed to paying the bank back or paying your lender back with interest. While that might seem good because you don't have to get the same approval, sometimes you don't have, they don't require the same credit approval and all that sort of stuff. I had a client recently that she was the one that just became a doctor, or she's a doctor and just started her practicing. She started her own practice up. They couldn't get approved for a loan because they just technically became self-employed instead of being employed. So then the bank won't give them a loan for 2 years and all that stuff. But there was a seller that was like, I know you have the money. You're a doctor who just started your own practice. Like you're gonna be fine. So I'll seller finance it to you. So she didn't have to go through the whole approval process of like dealing with the whole nonsense of her being self-employed now. But a seller was able to give her an interest rate basically on their own. However, sellers can just kind of pick an interest rate. They can't go above that limit of that's against the law or whatever. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, something like that. They can't just pick an interest rate that's like 35, but they can just say 11, and you kind of just have to deal with it. Even though like a normal interest rate might be 3.5, if they pick 7 or 8, you just have to pay it because that's what they're going to charge for you. They don't have the same thing as a bank where they'll kind of have formulas to figure out how much your interest rate should be. They'll just pick a number.
Typically in this area, it's 7%.
Yeah.
For seller financing.
For seller financing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually a lot higher than just normal financing. Yeah.
I think my sister-in-law got 9.99%.
9.99.
Oh.
And my brother got a whole 10.
Dang.
All right, so they request a title policy issued by Secure Title Company. So let's put that in here. Oh, it looks right here. So it tells us again later. The closer for Secure Title Company will be Tina Frost. So you can put that in here. Just put. I can't type it. And the office address is. Oh, okay. So now we have that. So they request a title policy from them that will also be here. And a new survey showing no encroachments or easements other than the 10-foot utility easement. So basically they want a new survey done. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about them paying for the survey. So we're going to go ahead and say that they're going to request that the seller gets a new survey at their expense. Why not? Again, that's kind of where it comes up to if they want to. Your job is to the buyer's agent, or as a buyer's agent, your job is to the buyer. If you're filling this out, you're representing the buyer, so you probably want to just make everything charged to the seller if you can. Just to see if they just accept this, cool. If they want to put back that it's actually the buyer that has to pay for it, cool. Just if your job is to the buyer, you kind of just want to see what will happen if you put everything for the seller, because you never know when people just don't pay attention. Let's see. The buyers want 10 days for objections to survey and title commitment. So that would be in objections, you can just put 10. And then let's put in here. The Swansons want to make sure that cable TV services are available. That would really go in title policy. I'm trying to think of where you'd actually put that in. Maybe just special provision. But they want to make sure that there's cable TV services are available. Is that something you get on the seller's disclosure? So you don't really. That's not something you need to put in here anyway. I'm actually just going to leave it blank because there's no reason. Again, special provisions, you can't exactly say that and say, or if not, they'll back out of the contract and get their earnest money back because you're creating new rights for the buyers. But in the seller's disclosure, it will say if there's antennas or cable TV like available. So that's something you'd actually receive on the seller's disclosure. So let's just say that we have. Let's see. It says they have received the seller's disclosure notice. So they should know this by now if they have cable TV services. So I'm just going to leave it like they know that they have it, or they don't, because again, they would have that information on the seller's disclosure. I bet when this was probably thing that wasn't there when this form was made or something. I have no idea. Okay, and then they basically want a 10-day option for $150. So we will put that in here, $150 for option money for a 10-day option period. The option fee will not be credited to the sales price at closing. Yes, it will. It has to be now. So even though this says it will not be, it's like not able to not be anymore. It has to be. That's kind of just the new contract says that it has to be. Again, when this paper was written, this contract was different where you checked a box on if it would be or would not be credited at closing. Possession will be granted at closing and funding. That is another key box. Let's see, where is possession? That is paragraph 10, there we go. Upon closing and funding. So make sure that you check that box just to make sure that when closing and funding happens, that is when possession will switch from the seller to the buyer. The property is not subject to a mandatory owners association, so it is not in a HOA. So you don't have to worry about that. Yeah. This is I noticed this too in these. They give you like Tina Frost's phone number and everything and email address for the title company. There's nowhere to put that in on these contracts. Like there never has been. So I don't know what those. I'm assuming those are just there to trick you because there's like nowhere to fill out. Like you wouldn't type that in here like Tina Frost and then her phone number and stuff. There's no other place you put her information in. So there's no other place to do that.
When I was doing my contract about 5 years ago, it did have a place for
Did it? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I've just been told that it never did. So that's why I was confused on why that's even a thing here. But I'm assuming if these are from 2016 or whatever, that I mean the slides are from 2016. The slides have these on it. So I'm assuming these are at least by 2016. So they probably a lot of things have probably changed by then.
I'll have to look at it because I sworn they had all the title company's information on there. But
Okay. Yeah. And then for here, you can always just, if you don't know them, just put in applicable, because to you it's not. They want to close on May 27th. That's kind of funny. Which is within 15 days of the effective date. I mean, it's not really for us if we're doing this today, but I should say this.
about like 30 days out.
Yeah. It is listed with Smooth Sales Realty, through whom the buyers purchase it without representation. This is a situation where you would put down here, where is it at? I always go past this. Here. This is where they would be an intermediary, because again, they do not have representation. So basically, the listing agent is working as an intermediary between the two people. I hate this jumps around so much; it makes it so confusing to try to go through fill this stuff out. The sellers requested the buyers furnish a current credit report within 5 days as evidence of good credit. That is something we'll do on the seller financing addendum, not so much in this contract. Finally tells where the property is located. The buyers want deletion of the common title policy exclusion relating to discrepancies, conflicts, and shortages of areas. So that would be right here. You're basically saying that you want this, and then that would be, if the buyers are wanting it, it'd be the buyers that are paying for it, that are expensive. And they're willing to pay the extra 5% policy premium required by the title company to do it. Let's see. Earnest money in the amount of $2,000 has been tendered. Finally, we understand what the earnest money is. Again, I hate filling these out. They're never in order. It makes it really confusing. So, when I fill these out too, I'll probably not fill out all of the blanks for everything because, again, we don't have all of the information. So I'm just going to leave some stuff blank as I'm scrolling through here, filling out what is in here. The seller will provide a new survey within 10 days at the seller's expense. So we got that down here for seller. let's see. The purchasers want to have an environmental assessment performed to make certain that there is no contamination and no toxic materials are present. That would require a environmental, what's it called now? I have it in here. Environmental assessment, threatened or endangered species and wetlands addendum. So there's a whole form that goes through all that stuff. That is basically saying that they want that addendum in there as well. And then the Swansons want any notices to go to Tim. So here, there'd be nothing here. Not me. There's nothing coming back to them, or at least it says there's nothing coming back to them. And then here, it's basically saying that the Swansons want stuff to go to. I don't remember who's buying who's selling. Yeah, okay, the Swansons are. So they want stuff to go to Tim at his address, 1450. And the sellers want everything to go to Samuel at the property address, which is the 15630 address that we filled out again. Again, this is a situation where if they said this, I would advise them that how about you have me put my information there, so you don't have to put your information in here. If they really request that they don't want me getting it, they want them getting it, sure, it's not worth the fight. Honestly, it sounds good. I'll put your stuff there, no big deal. Your job is to help them out, so if they want it, good for them. But so you're gonna put here, you're gonna put a seller financing addendum. You're going to do a, where is it? Environmental assessment addendum. And again, that covers assessment, threatened or endangered species, and wetlands, so it kind of covers a little bit of everything. And then you're also going to do other and do the non-realty items. So I'll just do that to shorten it. Because again, you want to put that non-realty items in there that just says any and all personal property left at the subject property is now property of the buyers. This is actually a situation you probably won't have that, because since they don't have it, since the guy's working as an intermediary, he probably wouldn't put that. Also, he probably, weirdly in this situation, wouldn't put everything in the favor of the buyers because he's actually representing the sellers, but he's filling the contract out, which is weird. I know Justin has told stories of like if he's representing the sellers and he'll get a call from the buyer's agent that says, hey, my buyers want to put in an offer at this much, can you write up the contract form? And he just says sure, because he'll write it up with all the good stuff for him, and then send it over to the buyers. And if they don't, if the buyer's agent goes cool and sends it over to them to have them sign it, they'll just sign it because the price is right. Not realizing that they actually they're having to pay for the title policy, they're having to pay for this, they're paying for that, they're paying for that. So it's something you can fill out if you're the seller's agent. It's just usually you're not the one getting the offer, you're the one receiving an offer and showing it to your client. So again, 99% of the time, the seller's agent is just waiting for an offer to come in. Not so much a role in writing the offers themselves. This one is, what is the company name here? Smooth Sale. That's what it is. So this is where you put in all of your information here because you work for Smooth Sale Realty. You just put it all in here and then click seller as seller and buyer as an intermediary. Basically saying you're not representing either one of them, you're just an intermediary passing papers around. So that's an interesting situation where there actually would be nothing on this side because there is no other brokerage. But you won't really, you'll probably deal with this maybe once in your whole career. Like it's not something you see that often. So it's nice you get it to work because you get 6%, but it's just not something you see often. All right, so the seller's financing addendum. Let's pull this up real quick. This is one of those ones where I didn't really know what it was asking for. And again, I wouldn't really know this. If you're the buyer's agent, you're not going to know what the seller is like. This is kind of a conversation you don't negotiate as well, as opposed to just saying how about this much. You kind of negotiate prices and everything. But what it did say is that to establish buyer credit worthiness, the seller requested the buyers furnish a current credit report within 5 days after the effective date. So within 5 days, they have to give them a credit report to kind of prove creditworthiness. While they might not have the exact credit like limit that lenders would have, you have to have a certain amount in order to get a loan. A seller would still want to know that you don't have a 250 credit score, and it's like, well, that you're gonna just run away. Like, they still want to know that you have at least an okay credit score. They might just not have the same requirements that a lender or a bank would have. All right, so the promissory note is $25,000 because that's what the seller financing is for, and then we were going to do 5% per annum to be payable at the place designed by the seller or designated by the seller. That is right here, so 25 for 5% annual interest. What I was kind of talking to Justin about is like, I don't know, because it's just for 5 years, so I'm assuming you put interest only in monthly installments for the first 5. I guess this is, like, my guess is this is saying it's $25,000, they're financing it for 5 years total, and then, or it's 5 years at 5%, and then we don't know what the rest of it's gonna be. Like, I don't know how long it's gonna last after that. If it is interest only in monthly installments for the first 60 months, if this is saying it's only interest at 5% for the first 5 years, and then after that you're just paying it down. There's no interest added onto it. I don't know how much they'd be paying per month. That's something they'd work out, I'm assuming, through here. I don't know. So, or either that or it's a lot of math that I'm not willing to do right now. And you won't have to do that math on the test. You might have to do what's 5% of a certain amount or whatever. You won't have to figure out if there's a loan of $63,000 that's at 5% interest rate for 10 years. How much are they totally going to be paying in month 4 of year 7? That's not something you have to worry about. So don't. Yeah, Aiden's shaking his head no. Yeah, don't. Yeah, that's what I would have just been like, cool, next question. Hey, why not? Yeah, it's not something you have to worry about. So, and then the deed of trust consent's not required, so the property may be sold, conveyed, leased without the consent of the seller. It's either A or B. If you require that the seller, since he still has an interest in the property, because even though you own it, you're still paying him you're paying him your kind of mortgage to him. If you were to sell it or sell part of the property, you would have to okay that with the previous seller because you still owe him money. That's basically what this consent is asking. And then tax and insurance escrow. So basically, if the buyer is going to be paying an escrow account that the seller has set up for interest and for the payments of the mortgage, as opposed to just like handing the guy cash just because that'd be A or B here. And that is that one. And then the environment assessment wetlands. This is a really complicated one. They want an environmental assessment, so you click that. They want it to be 10 days after the contract to back out if the purchase environmental assessment performed. Okay, so there's no contamination. This they will do within 10 days after the effective date of the contract. Basically saying, environmental assessment, 10 days, good to go. That's the whole thing. Very, very simple. If they want to have somebody come out and check for a threat area endangered species or wetlands, that's where you pick one of these. But that's all it's saying there. Pretty simple thing. Now, I'm going to go through the last one real quick. The last one is a condominium transaction. So you won't be using the 1 to 4 family, you'll be using a condominium one. Also, I was yelling at Justin earlier because you will never see this. I was looking at it realizing like it's a condo that's being sold on the Gulf. So you need both the Gulf addendums. It's also a backup contract, not an actual contract. Also, they want this and this done, and it's a loan assumption. You'll never deal. This is the most complicated thing I've ever seen. You will never have to deal with something like that. So, yay. But I ended up having to get a bunch of addendums in here because it has asked for a bunch of different stuff. So, but we'll go through this residential one, or at least the condominium contract, just to kind of, and I'll breeze through the others just to explain what they are, what they look like, and then we'll move on. So, this is the Kramer to Sweeney transaction. So, Unit 623 of Building B of the condominium project, known as Freedom Flats Phase 2 at Corpus Christi, How do you say that?
Blesses.
Nueces? Sure. Nueces County, Texas is being sold to Brian Sweeney and spouse Ellie Sweeney by Paul Kramer and his wife Sarah. So the buyers are going to be Brian C. Sweeney and Ellie J. Sweeney, and the sellers are Paul Kramer and Sarah Kramer. Now, in section 2, and a good thing to remember about paragraph 2 is paragraph 2 is actually different in every contract. It's one of the few paragraphs that's different every single time. Paragraph 1 basically always looks the same. Who are the buyers, who are the sellers? Paragraph 2 looks different every single one because some of the times you're just dealing with land, some of the times you're dealing with land that has, like, for example, if you're just dealing with land, you have no improvements or accessories. A new home won't have improvements or accessories. Condos don't have land in them, so it can be kind of all over the place, and everyone's a little bit different. So basically in here, instead of having land, it has the condominium unit. You don't have the lot and block number and the address, if you remember, or you have the address, but not the lot and block and the legal description, because that's not what you're selling. You're not selling the land, you're just selling the airspace between the walls, if you remember what we talked about before. So here it's going to be unit 623 of building B. So building B of the condominium unit, Freedom Flats, these two. At a condominium project, no cave at, and here's the address, 1225. I'm imagining that's oh, is this whole line for the zip code next? I'm glad they gave us that much space.
You never know, those postal places.
I know, it can be long. Sometimes they're 9 digits.
Yeah. Can you believe that in New Jersey, their area code is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
That's so nice. That's gotta be so nice. Just satisfying.
So I would send documents to a hospital,
Mhm.
and their street or their address was 3388 Princess Anne Road, New Jersey. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, so it's easy to remember.
This is a made up
Yeah.
place. This isn't real.
Yeah, I thought
They're making this up.
Yeah, that was weird.
Also, they give you 2 lines to put in the county just in case it's a really long county. So I don't know. These things are weird. Also here it's going to be parking areas assigned to the unit are blank. And if you look right here, the ownership of the unit includes 2 parking spaces identified as numbers 1654 and 1658. So, 1650 and 1658. I'm gonna go ahead and put, oh god, a bunch of wrong things. Just to make sure that we're not gonna get, people aren't gonna be like, well, is that, which ones or whatever. Just be as specific as possible. That's kind of a good key to think with any of these contracts is just the more specific you are, you're not gonna get in trouble for being specific. You'll get in trouble if there's actually 3 spots labeled this because they have a parking lot, a parking garage, and a whatever. It's best just to be as specific as possible, just to be clear. I doubt they'd have 3 spots with 1654. That seems very unique to have 3 spots for it, but just to be safe. There should be nothing in inclusions here. The Sweeneys currently live at this residence in Galveston. This is their telephone number, and Brian's email address is blank. You won't need that until basically the notices, if they want to receive notices. Prior to signing the agreement of purchase, the buyers received, reviewed, and accepted all of the condominium documents, as well as a condominium resale certificate that was prepared and signed by the Secretary of the Owners Association. So, they have received a copy of the documents, and they have received the certificate. That makes this really easy. If they have not received copies of the documents, you basically put in how many days they need to receive them. Same with the resale certificate, the condominium resale certificate. Let's see. Is there anything in D? I don't believe so. Yeah, so there's nothing you have to worry about in D. All right, so let's go to the sales price. So the buyer's going to pay $368,200 for the unit and assume the seller's existing conventional loan with an outstanding balance of $265,008. So that would be here, and then you have to do the math. 3682 minus 265,008 to end up with 103,192. I did it off the top of my head. Don't look at my paper. So they're basically paying 103 in cash and 265 in a loan assumption to get to that 368. They're putting a lot down in cash, so these people bank it. That's all I can say. Let's see. The loan is a portfolio loan held by Deep Pocket Mortgage. You won't have to deal with that until later on as well. This is all about basically how they're going to assume the loan. That is something you'll do in a loan assumption paperwork or addendum, not so much in this contract. The buyers will pay the owner's title policy. That's very kind of them because that is usually, that is usually not how that happens. Usually it's just 90% of the time the seller pays for it. Let's see. Does it have where they're getting title policy from? Not yet. I guess we'll move on. The buyers receive the seller's disclosure notice and accept the property in its present condition. However, let's say they want, it says they want 3 days here to object after receiving the title commitment. So they accept the property as is, provided that the seller at the seller's expense replaces the non-functioning garbage disposal. And the broken faucet. I can type a little faster than Steph, so I don't mess up all my. Let's see. Okay, so they received the seller's disclosure notice, so they have received the notice. You don't have to worry about getting it back to them or them having to receive it within a certain amount of days. That is already covered. The project was built in 1979. Yippee! That is after 1978. So we don't have to worry about filling up that addendum. Not after 1978. That is 1978 or later. I don't want to say that and get people confused. If it's built in 1978, we're good. So on or after 1978, no need for a lead-based paint addendum. Before 1978, you need the lead-based paint addendum. The buyers are not asking for a residential service contract, so you can go ahead and put 0 there. The monthly principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment is $28.85, and the monthly maintenance fee is $236. The resale certificate furnished by the Secretary of the Owners Association confirmed that amount of the maintenance fee, and the buyers will pay any transfer or processing fee charged by the Owners Association. Make it a little bit. Oh, don't get it. Maybe it'll be easier to see the whole thing at the same time. The sellers will have a purchase agreement reviewed by attorney Michael Holmes. That is one of the few situations, if you know this, that would go in. Oh, sorry, not there. To the seller's attorney. He is at 1009 Baker Street, Corpus Christi, whatever. His last name is Holmes. It should be B. Baker. And his email address is michael.holmes@attorney.com. That's what you would put right here. So. Cool. So, the unit has been listed by Skyline Realty. You are the listing agent. Your listing company will pay the sub-agent, Downhall Realty, a selling fee equal to 3.25% of the selling price of the property. That is all stuff that will go in here. So you are from Skyline Realty, and the other one is Downhall Realty. this would be, what is her name? Candy. She did Candy. All of her information would go there, and then this is where all of your information would go here. For example, this is me, because this is I'm part of Skyline Realty now, apparently. And then you are paying them as a sub-agent, so they are technically not an agent of the buyer. Basically, this is a situation where you represent the seller, and a company you've basically paid a company to bring you a client, but they're still representing the seller. They're not representing the buyer. This you will very, very, very rarely see. It still does happen every once in a while, but basically, in this situation, I'm representing my seller, and Candy is representing the seller, but she's a sub-agent for the buyer, so she can help the buyer, but her duty is still to the seller. Very confusing. Yeah, it's very confusing. You won't see this possibly ever. This is not common at all. So this is of course on her stuff. You put all in her phone number and all that sort of stuff and her email address. Oh, we finally get it. So $2,000 in earnest money. So we'll go back up to, here we go. Earnest money will be given to, get that out of the way. Buyer's choice. Title company. They will also issue the owner's policy at closing. There you go, 104 3rd Ave. Corpus Christi, Texas. And then, what else fits right there? That's nice. $2,000 there. The buyers will pay the seller $250 in auction fee for 7 days. I'm probably jumping around, but that's what came to mind first. And then here, it says they will also furnish the owner's title policy. So there you go. The closing agent is Weldon Crescent. Again, you can put that here if you specifically requested him, but when you're filling this out, they probably just sent it to buyer's choice and then just found out later that the closing agent is Weldon Crescent. But there's nowhere to put his information in here now, so you don't have to worry about that. You can just send it just like this and you'll be fine. This is something that will go on the seller's, or the loan assumption that the sellers will deliver a copy of the note and deed of trust to the buyers for review within 3 days. The buyers also request that copies of every document they will be asked to sign at closing be delivered to them for review. There's no order for that either on this contract. They paid them $250 for 7 days. Again, I put that here for the option and here for the option period. Being credited back to them at closing, it always is. So congratulations. This is also for the loan assumption addendum. Now, this is where it gets confusing. There's already an existing contract in place dated May 5th between the sellers and a bachelor Mason Wright. If the sellers notify the buyers on or before 5 p.m. on May 20th that the contract with Mr. Wright is terminated, this agreement is no longer subject to the contingency, and the effective date of this contract will be amended to be the date of termination of the previous contract. Now it says up here, I believe, I thought it had something about the closing date. Maybe I made that up. Oh, here you go. Okay. So the 30 days is the effective date of this contract, which will allow for closing on June 16th. So in this situation, there you go. So this going to be June 16th, according to this right here. So possession will be at closing and funding. All right, so that should be everything that we kind of know for this one. And also here, you don't know any of the people involved. So this is everything we know for this contract. Now I will kind of run through quickly the other addendums for this. the notices here, they gave us the Sweeney's email address and Paul and Sarah's email address and phone number and everything. So you can put their stuff here. Again, this is a situation where you would probably want to put your information. And again, you would put every single time it's the client care of agent. Now, the reason it's client care of agent, just to kind of help explain it, maybe sink it into your brain a little better, is care of just means through or using. So if somebody is sending a notice to the buyer, they're still sending it to the buyer or the client. They're just sending it to the client through you. So they're sending it to your address or email or whatever to get it to the client. So the notice is still going to the client because they're the one that actually has to receive the notice. They're just sending it to you, or sending it to them through you, I should say. Another thing I think I forgot to put in here, just realized, is that's just something, again, always like to put it just to cover yourself up. Here would be not applicable because there is nothing we have read or seen that would make us put anything there, and nobody's asking for monies in return. The buyers are asking for the seller to give them anything, so that would be blank there. So, and then here, again, we have all of these addendums that we've read through that have to be used. So there is a loan assumption. So you're going to do a loan assumption addendum. This is a backup contract, not the actual. They already have a contract underway. So this is a backup contract. You are doing the coastal area property, because this is on the coast. Located seaward of the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway. Again, it's on the coast, so you need that. And a release of liability on assumption of an FHA, VA, or conventional loan. That is because the seller is basically releasing their loan to you. So this is what that form is for. And then other non-realty items. So in total, you have 6 addendums for this property. It's very annoying, so just, it's all good. You can do it fine. But you're gonna have a lot of stuff. So you have the loan assumption addendum. Now, I've already filled these out just to make it a little bit quicker. Basically, address, the address of the property here. So to establish buyer's creditworthiness, buyer shall deliver to seller within 3 days of the effective date. I put a credit report. I don't think it actually says anything on here of, I know it said within 3 days. They will apply for assumption and approval within 3 days, but it doesn't really give them, like there's no real way they're going to apply. They're just doing it. So I just put credit report here because there's no other, you can just pick one at this point, or else you wouldn't know. You'd ask them what they're going to do. They are assuming a loan that is held by Deep Pocket Mortgage Company. So you put Deep Pocket Mortgage Company, and then the closing will be blank much. Now, the total current monthly payment, including principal, interest, and any reserve deposits, it did say in here that the PITI payment is $2,885 per month. Yeah, so we're gonna go $2,885 there. And again, there's no second lien. That is the only lien on it. So it's just the one lien that you're assuming there. Where was it? The current loan, if the loan balance is a few dollars more or less at closing, the cash payable at closing will be adjusted to compensate for any variance. So that's what this is saying here, is that if anything's a little bit different, it'll change the cash payable, not the sales price at closing. The loan assumption terms, that's where you would put the terms of your loan assumption. You don't have all of that information. You have some percentages here, but nothing in dollar amount that will change that. And then the notices to the buyer and seller, and then they would sign here. So that is all that form is. You have the addendum for backup contract, basically stating, we went through this 2 days ago, that the first contract was formulated on May 5th. That is what this last paragraph here says. There was a contract in place dated May 5th between the sellers and a different person, basically. So this is when the initial contract, 2001, that's a far ways away. I'm just gonna fix that. Is that? Oh, sure. Let's do it that way. Okay, sure. It goes that way. So the first contract is May 5th. And basically saying if that contract does not terminate on or before May 20th, then the backup contract is basically terminated. They can get out of the backup contract. However, if it is terminated before May 20th, then whatever day it was terminated, that becomes the new effective date of the contract we just filled out. So if it terminates May 18th, if the people we just helped fill out their contract form, if Brian and Ellie, even though we had closing on June 16th or whatever, let's say we filled all this out and the sellers came back, they said congratulations, we agree on May 7th, because if the first contract was May 5th, let's say this is 2 days later on May 7th. Well, if the first contract is terminated on May 18th and we're notified about that, this new date becomes May 18th. It just auto corrects to whenever the previous contract was terminated. And we were notified of that. So that is all this second link here is saying. All right. Addendum for coastal area property. It's more of just a notice regarding the property. This is the one saying, again, you can't build a giant structure blocking the beach. And this is saying the seller, transfer, or grantor has no knowledge of any prior fill as it relates to property described and subject to this contract, except if the seller doesn't have they don't notice anything like that, then this would be left blank. So you literally just have this page, address and property, and then just have them sign here. And I believe it is the same for this. There's nothing to fill out on the addendum for property located seaward of the Gulf Intracoastal. It's just a bunch of notices. And then they sign at the bottom here. And here we go. Their addendum for release of liability. So this is saying that within 3 days of the effective date of the contract, the seller and buyer shall apply for release of seller's liability of any conventional loan, VA, or any lender whose loans are been guaranteed by VA or FHA. So this contract, they are being released on just a normal loan. They're not being entitled, or they're not trying to restore their VA loan entitlement. They're just trying to be released from their current loan. This would be, again, how we talk about a veteran they can only get one VA loan at a time. So if they were to try to buy another house and they were selling their house, they have to go through the process of selling their current property and getting their VA loan restored so that they can purchase their next property with that VA loan, because they can only have one active at a time. And let's see. Yeah, the sellers will permit the loan to be assumed only if they are released from liability and will not close if the lender refuses to release them. So this says the contract will terminate and the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer if any release of liability has not been approved by the closing date. So if they're not able to be released from their loan, the contract's terminated. You would click this if they're not trying to necessarily get out of the loan, but the other people are just trying to find a cheaper way in. If this is the second box, basically says if they're not able to be released from it, then we're still going to go through with closing. You just have to now get a conventional loan instead of a loan assumption. So it basically saying it's not going to delay closing. We're not going to terminate the contract because we just have to find another way to pay for it. Whereas box one is basically saying the contract will be terminated if we cannot get released from this. All right. That, I believe, is all. That is everything. Again, I know these can be super confusing because the wording on this is weird. They're really old forms, so or at least the hypotheticals are older. So there's information you don't need, there's information you do need that's not in it, stuff like that. But it's good to still get a look at some stuff on how taking the words and trying to put them into practice on where to fill them in the documents. We're going to end somewhat early tonight. I know Aiden is super stoked about the draft. So
Rock on.
really excited
Yeah.
about an NFL draft going on. How's it going so far?
First pick is almost in.
Oh, first pick's almost in.
Yeah,
Oh,
started
nice.
at 7.
Look at us excited. Okay. So, like I said, these are complicated, but you won't see something like this. You'll never have to deal with something like this where you won't have a buyer that will just send you I hope not. I hope you won't have a buyer that just sends you like an email that's just an essay of this is the stuff we'd like to do. Please fill out a form. And again, if you don't know certain things that are filled in here, for example, like that seller financing addendum, I was kind of confused on one of the boxes what I should put there. I just go ask Justin. Like that's a situation. Just ask your broker. That's what they're there for, to help you out. If you're at a place that you don't have a broker that can help you out, get somewhere else that has a broker that can help you out. I know I've heard of a lot of people that go to, what's like larger companies where or smaller companies where the guy's like, cool, you're signed, and then they kind of just disappear and you're on your own. You don't want to be in that situation because if stuff like this comes up where you're confused about what box to click, you don't want to click the wrong one and mess up. So you can always talk to your broker. You can talk to your buyers. If you, for example, again, I've read all these contracts. I've taught them to you. I know every paragraph in this contract, but I might not know, for example, what they want me to click in a certain box. Just talk to your clients and explain to them what the paragraph's for. That's why Justin said he used to always have everybody go through and in each paragraph summarize it in a sentence or two. And so you can go down and for kind of the more complicated things, let's say the shortage is an area here, or something like that, you can kind of go through with your clients and explain what that means and see if they want to do it or not. Or if they want to survey, if they want to pay for it or not. You don't know if they have one or blah, blah, blah. Just go talk to them and figure it out. That, it's a lot easier than it seems. If they want to be, if you don't know if it's in a homeowners association or not, that's not on you. That's on the seller. They're the ones who would know that. They're the ones who live there. So send it to them, and if they send it back with an X through this, and they check this box and then initial next to it, just initial next to it, it's been fixed, cool, we're all good to go. That's on them, not on you. So I know this can be hard. I just don't want to stress them out and make them think it's impossible. This job is not impossible. I know me and Aiden know that for sure. Like I said, I spent all day filling these out, and I'm still confused on half of them. So these are not easy, and they're complicated, and they're weird. But I hope that kind of covers everything a little bit better. Does anybody have any questions? I strongly suggest if you are confused about anything to ask. All I'm trying to do is help y'all. So, so if y'all are confused about anything, let me know. Yes?
What came first, the chicken or the egg? That's what I'm confused on.
Egg. Good question.
Where did it come from?
I don't know.
Just grew.
Yeah, just on a tree. Other than that, what I'm actually going to do, because we got through all three hypotheticals today, is tomorrow we're just going to do a study session for 2 hours. That's my plan tomorrow. I'm going to review some stuff. We're going to look back on some stuff and, like I said, review things, look back on old PowerPoints and kind of maybe go through some stuff again, or old contracts and go through a little more paragraphs, just more in detail. If y'all have any questions, please let me know. And then there's also there might be stuff that looking through this, I noticed I did that yesterday. I was looking through some of the addendums, and there's some stuff that I was like, I should probably point that out or whatever, that I just didn't think about, but it might show up here or there. So I'll kind of go through some of that stuff again and kind of point extra things out I might have missed, and then cover things that I've already covered, but just a little more in detail to remind y'all kind of before next week comes around when y'all have the test. Speaking of that, we'll kind of discuss this more tomorrow, but we're trying to figure out what time to take the test. I know some people hated taking it at night. Some people liked it. I'm trying to talk with Justin to see if we can get maybe 2 times, one earlier in the day and one in the afternoon or whatever, to kind of, or one in the afternoon, one in the evening. So that way people can take it when they feel most comfortable to take it. I don't want to stress anybody out. I don't want anybody failing because they're falling asleep because they're taking a test at 10 p.m. So if you're the person that goes to bed at 9, I don't want you taking a test at 10. So I'll try to figure that out and see if we can do something like that. I'm happy we can do the study session tomorrow, so I don't have to worry about trying to schedule that sometime next week too. Other than that, if y'all have not watched Chapter 6 lecture, I'll point this out again. Please go back and do that. That's the day that the internet went out, and I had to record it 2 days later and put it up. Please go listen to that because, again, we went through the 1 to 4 family, but there are 5 other contracts. That condominium contract we went to, farm and ranch, unimproved property, and then both new home complete and new home incomplete. I went through all of those paragraph by paragraph, or not so paragraph by paragraph, but to show the differences, the stuff that's different between that and the 1 to 4 family, since we covered that paragraph by paragraph. So please listen to that lecture. It's very important. If you're going off this, 1/5 of your class is the wonderful family, and 4/5 are the other ones. There's one class that went through 4/5 of it. So, and that's one that we all missed. So please go back and listen to that. But other than that, I will see y'all tomorrow, and we will do a study session then, and then we'll, if you're not in the class, get in the class. Please do your assignments. Again, you have till next week when we take the test to turn on your assignments. So just want to point out to you. See y'all tomorrow. Y'all have a good evening.